Right, time for character profile. It seems like ages since we did a character profile, doesn't it? I don't remember who... Was Gina the last one we did? I don't know, it was ages ago. But this week... And this week, it seems like we should have done it earlier because we're going to be talking about Jude this week. Jude Appleton.
And have we ever done Hey Jude?
I'm sure...
No, we never have.
I'm sure we've had it as a storyline title for him in the couple of years that he's been in it. Jude, he left a couple of weeks ago, but because we had a lovely interview with Victoria, and then we had Jonies, we had to put it off till now. And speaking of whom, this isn't a character profile on Angie Appleton, because we believe in you that you'll be back one day. So we'll pick you up next time it is. Although I'm sure there'll be some overlap.
I don't understand why you're so stingy with these, because you can just do them again.
What do you mean?
Well, we've
done a few revisits, haven't we?
I could literally do the same character profile every week for a year and I wouldn't remember. And every time it would be completely different. Apart from the bits where I obviously always seem to tell the same joke. 'Cause sometimes I listen back to the podcast and I'll hear a setup for something and I go, blah, 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 a joke in my head, and then I'll say the exact same joke on the podcast, which goes to prove I don't listen to myself, and also I'm very predictable.
You said you listened to the Jonies earlier, weren't you?
I tell you what.
You said it. You said
I'm
like
really
50
sorry
times.
for the amount of times I said, I tell you what. I will try not to say it again, ever. I think I've used up an entire lifetime's worth of I tell you what, but that's my catchphrase now.
I'll listen out for it and give you a slap. I realised
that's my catchphrase. This is a really boring thing to say.
Well,
tell you what,
Gemma.
Yeah.
Jude Appleton, eh? What a character. What's his stats? Give us his rundown, Gemma.
He was born on the 28th of November 1984. His parents were Mary Taylor and some dodgy guy. He was married to Angie Appleton in 2016. He had one child, George Appleton, in 2017. He first appeared on Christmas Day 2016, and he last appeared on the 2nd of January 2019. He was in 90 episodes, and he was played by Paddy Wallace.
Yeah, 90 episodes, it's like so close to triple figures. He might be back, I suppose.
I'm sure look, if he doesn't come back, I'll be a bit mad, because he's one of the most interesting characters of recent years.
He only got there in the end, to be fair.
Look, some people never get there. Let's not be...
That's very, very true as well. So Paddy was a graduate of the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama. So
Is he good at music?
I don't know. I wonder whether like he and Victoria used to like do singing and stuff.
They could do a duet.
Yeah, because we know that she's got a good set of
pipes.
pipes.
Maybe play the guitar or something, or maybe he plays something like a mandolin.
What instrument do they play in Ireland?
Oh God, Michael! Don't make us look so ignorant.
The fife, maybe.
The fife.
I don't know. Sorry, Irish people. Paddy Wallace was also on TV a few times before. No, yeah, loads or a few. I don't remember, but he was in Waterloo Road. Didn't watch that. Hollyoaks. Didn't watch that. Game of Thrones.
Don't remember.
That's right.
Him in
Paddy
that.
Wallace was in Game of Thrones, and you might not realise because I think he had a mask on. He was he one of the King's Guard, or he was? What was that episode?
I don't accept roles in the form of questions.
He was in the Sons of the Harpy episode. Do you remember the one where when all the when they all came and there was a mass slaughter, and then the old guy got killed?
Oh, did he kill? He didn't kill the old guy, did he?
I don't know whether he killed anyone, but he was in. I think he was in charge of commanding people. He got a spoken line, but yeah, I think he had a helmet on. Yeah, so you would never know it was him. Next time you watch it, go back
what
and
an
see.
interesting question. Would you like to be on Game of Thrones, but you wear a mask and nobody knows it's you?
Yeah, it'd be one to add to the old resume, wouldn't it?
I'll think about it. I'd rather win the lottery.
And he was on Doctors as well, which is quite a funny role considering that Jude was fake Doctor.
Tell me more about Doctors.
Well, he was actually, just as you ask, he had 3 different roles on Doctors in 4 years.
Was
so
it like
don't know whether he had like a
white?
Don't know whether he wore a fake moustache in one time and then glasses the next time and a silly wig the third time, and it's like nobody noticed.
Human beings are so awful. Our memories are so bad.
I know, it really is. So anyway, let's have a rundown of Jude's history then. Do you want me to start? Do you want to start?
Go on.
I will start. So, 1984. Picture it, Gemma. You were 2. A 14-year-old Mary is sexually assaulted by a so-called family friend. I think it was like a friend of their mum's or dad's or something, and she was staying over there.
I thought it was a vicar.
I thought it was a vicar as well. And then I was looking on Coripedia, and somewhere said it was a minister, and then but where I was reading on Coripedia, it said it was a family friend. But I don't know. You can be friends with the vicar, I suppose.
Vicars. I think they let them mingle with common folk.
Yeah, I think it might have been. Anyway, so she got pregnant just like old Amy at the moment, and Mary's mum blamed her for what happened, and this is. I think, as Mary was saying, this was one of the things that first caused the rift between her and her mum, and Mary was hidden away until birth, and then when she was born, when he was born, Jude, he was left at St Jude's Hospital, hence the name. He's found by a nurse, and she was the one that named him Jude, and then he was put up for adoption. So if he comes back, maybe he can swap stories with Tyrone, because he knows all about being left on a doorstep, and then. From in between 1985 and 2016, Jude apparently had a happy life. But around 2014, his foster parents died, so that probably put a bit of a dampener on things. We first saw him on Coronation Street in 2016, where earlier that year, off screen, he'd met Angie, lovely Angie, told her that he's a marine biologist. It was to impress her, wasn't it? I just wrote that down in the notes, that's from memory.
Well, it wasn't so he could get a discount on some fish down the chippy, was it?
Oh, no, you're probably right. And then they got married very quickly because Angie is well into marine biologists and takes him to bed, gets pregnant, and they live together in South Africa. So what a life. Now, this is where his story started on Coronation Street because, if you remember back a couple of years, Mary had a bit of a health scare and then she opened up to Norris about Jude, their son that she gave away when she was 14 and hasn't actually mentioned since, but apparently he's been thinking about him all the time.
I don't think she gave him away. He was basically taken from her as a child.
Yes, I suppose so. A little bit, again, like the Tyrone situation. And so Mary decided that she wanted to track Jude down. And because we are in modern times, the way you do that is on social media these days. With a little bit of help from Gemma, who put out a call on social media to find him, within weeks, Jude was right up in Coronation Street, in Roy's Rolls, on Christmas Day. All right, ma'am. I'm Jude. And Mary was thrilled to meet him, such a lovely guy he was. And she said...
Good job that you want dropped off at Weatherfield General, really, isn't it?
Yeah, what do we call that?
General.
Jen.
My name's General Appleton.
I'm an army officer.
It's a funny coincidence, but it makes about as much sense as me being a marine biologist.
So Mary was a little bit... what's the phrase? Something with the truth? A little bit...
Loose?
Loose with the truth, yeah. Because she told him that his father was actually the real love of her life, but sadly he died because she didn't want him to know that he was the product of this rape of an underage girl. So Jude was kind of happy with that. It was so sad that he never got to meet him. And he invited Mary to move to South Africa with him, and she accepted. So we went into the end of 2016 wondering, is this the last we're going to see of Mary? She disappears off on the New Year's Eve episode, and then Norris had a bit of a cry. And when she saw just how sad all of her friends and neighbours would be to see the back of her, she had a change of heart, came back to Coronation Street while Jude flew off into the sunset alone.
But not for long.
Not for long. Well, that was the last we thought we'd see of him. But he came back, didn't he?
Yeah. In
Tell me more.
2017, he came back with Angie and newborn baby George.
Ah.
Because, let's us not forget, that Mary got married to Norris, and he came back for that.
Why did she do that again? Oh, it was for the
Mr. competition.
Of course. Why else would you marry somebody if not just to win a Mr. and Mrs. quiz?
This was to win a Mr. and Mrs. competition so that they could go to South Africa.
Oh, that's right.
To visit Jude. It was a round the world trip.
Yeah.
And she was like, brilliant, I'll stop off. And then Jude turns up and she's like, oh, screw this. What's the point of this? But they're married anyway, so explain that one to me. Anyway, Jude is shocked when Mary tells Angie the truth about Jude's conception, and Norris has to reassure him that Mary just didn't want to tell him because he didn't want him to be upset, and that later on the Appletons decide to stay in Weatherfield for some reason. Tensions grow between Mary and the Appletons when Angie, she accuses her of driving drunk with George in the back seat.
Yeah, Mary accuses Angie, doesn't she?
Sorry, yeah. Also, Angie's suffering from postnatal depression, so there's a lot of tension between Mary and Jude. And Jude calls Mary a freak and disowns her.
Yeah, this was when Jude suddenly showed signs of life, wasn't it?
Yeah, he became a bit of a nasty guy.
Yeah, and that kind of stayed throughout the rest of the time on the show.
You never really got that dimpled cheek little cherub.
No, people did accuse him of being a bit boring, but he definitely had a bit of fire in him when Tank got his goat.
Jude and Angie accuse Mary of harming George when they notice that he gets a rash, but it only happens when he's staying with Mary. And they're like, right, that's it. We're going to move back to South Africa. But Tracy convinces them to stay by locking them in the back of Preston's pedals and fighting the case for Mary's innocence. Then we find out that George is allergic to fruit. All fruit, don't question it, he's just allergic to fruit.
Mary was feeding him bananas, wasn't she?
Or pineapple
Mashed up
or
bananas
something.
or something like that. Right, that leads us to this year, when Jude went... What?
It's not 2018.
Last year. When Jude, and then Jude went off and that was it. No, the 2018 was the year when Jude really came into his own as a character, I thought. But it was a bit too little too late, really. He went job hunting and he told everybody that he's got a researcher's job at Weatherfield Sea Life Centre. Because, as we remember,
biologist.
he's a marine biologist. And at this
Didn't
point,
he specialise in seahorses?
I don't know. I just remember him used to doing lots of reading up about it.
He had seahorse facts.
He had facts about anything. And wasn't Mary also reading marine biology facts to try so that she could have something that they could talk about together?
I bet you, if you'd said to Jude, it's funny how male seahorses get pregnant, not the female ones, he'd have gone, what? I mean, yes. It's very strange.
So Mary was desperately trying to take an interest because she wanted to bond with her son that she's not seen for most of his life, and there's been all these problems and fallings out about the fruit thing, and Angie's postnatal depression and everything. So she's like,
amount of drama in his life since he moved to Weatherfield.
Who'd have thought? I'm so proud of my son. I'm going to go and see him at work just to see what he gets up to. And she goes there and finds him working in the gift shop because, Gemma...
What?
He's not really a marine biologist. He was making it up.
No. Why would you lie about that?
Who knows? Yeah, so I don't think that wasn't always originally planned for the character, was it? I think
really
we've seen
not.
since. But it was
a stroke of genius.
That was a great trivia. Loved it. He was working there in the gift shop with a shark cat.
Farcical, one would say.
So
he panicked when Angie turns up there too, because he'd been moaning about these work colleagues that were bullying him because he was trying to get out of work in there and he didn't want anyone to come see him.
Yeah, he was getting bullied there, wasn't he?
Well, yeah, because he was a lowly cashier getting bullied by the other cashiers.
Yeah,
got too much time on their hands. They should be rearranging pencils.
Yeah, and little rainbow rubbers and stuff.
I wasn't going to say rubbers because Americans think that means condom. But in this country, it's a razor. A pencil eraser is called a rubber. Welcome to the UK.
Am I carrying on?
I interrupted you.
Sorry.
Because I got excited about that bit, but this is your section.
No, I don't mind. Well, yeah, so Angie turns up and she wants to meet these workmates because she thinks that the best way to deal with bullies is to invite them round for tea. And I should try that when the children come up to me at school.
Have you tried giving them, like, something of yours that is very precious to you? Or inviting them to your house for dinner?
Yeah, I brought them round for a nice pie. So What was the story? What he ended up inviting two actors because if the
amateur dramatic
because if the actual bullies came round for tea, they'd go, no, he works with us at the gift shop. So these amateur actors came round. Some brilliant scenes where they're all pretending to.
They'd set up their backstories quite elaborately, hadn't they?
Yeah, they were going well into it and giving all the facts and everything. It all basically goes wrong, and Angie discovers just what a big fat fibber Jude is.
But it was foolproof.
She's not too happy with this, and basically over the rest of the 2018, their marriage pretty much dissolves. But unlike everyone else on Coronation Street, who just like split up or sleep with somebody else, they actually went to marriage counselling, which I thought was quite novel.
That's because Angie is too good for this world.
Anyway, it didn't work
though. We've got trouble in our marriage. What should we do? We could go to marriage counselling. That's a thing that real people do. Doesn't work though. No, she's just not into him. So the sheen has come off of him when she realises that he's been lying about being a marine biologist all this time, and he's just doing it to impress her. And we don't really know how they managed to make ends meet when he didn't. Did he not bring
really
in
have a
any
job?
income whatsoever?
No.
Do you think he used to stand around outside, petrol stations pulling cons, like what's her face out of Lost, Kate.
Oh yeah, maybe.
What was that scam she did with the
I don't remember.
the engagement ring?
I don't know.
I bet he had a load of scams going.
But he did. This the unknown story of Jude.
I'm
All the
still
times when he
waiting
wasn't on
for it
screen.
to become. I mean, this whole thing. I mean, we're not going through this properly, but it really does throw a question over the fact as to whether Jude really was Mary's son, because he is a con artist and he was lying this whole time, and he turns up out of the blue a few weeks after there's this big social media campaign to try to find Mary's real son.
And
What's more likely, that they actually managed to find a guy who was living in South Africa who went, yeah, that sounds like me. I'm going to fly on Christmas Day, even though I've got a wife who's pregnant at home, to go and see my mum and then just go back home again almost immediately. Or that he was a con artist trying to get money out of her, which actually did work in the end because he got free rent out of her.
It was a bit of a long game as well until he got that money.
But when you're a con artist with no real means of income, leeching off a woman for a year is pretty good going.
Well, I think the whole Jude's not really Mary's son who's been lying about that it was a popular fan theory, but I think it's been shot down.
Why?
I haven't seen the DNA test results.
I think it would be much better if it turned out that she wasn't his son, and then we got a new one. Because we know that what she said was true.
Yeah. Anyway, Mary, meanwhile, while this marriage counselling is going on, is planning a surprise vow renewal for Jude. Because Angie, yeah, just by himself. She can see that things aren't going great between them, and what better way to bring back a couple than to spring this on them.
Romance.
So Angie, have the ceremony.
Jude
it's down in
Speeddial.
Jude finds out about it just a bit before, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But Angie is like walking down the steps in Speeddial, and she is pretty furious when it's sprung on her, and she walks out.
Because there wasn't even 300 budgies or anything.
No. Now later that day, Jude is in Victoria Gardens.
Vicky Gardens.
Yeah, old Vicky G's. When Roy collapses because there's bees there and he gets stung by a bee, and it turns out that he's allergic to them.
He should have sued the council.
Who saves Roy? It's
Ali.
Dr. Ali, because he's got an EpiPen with him. But Jude takes the credit. And from that he decides that he thinks it'd be awesome to train to be a paramedic.
But there's one problem.
Which is?
He faints at the sight of blood.
Yes, exactly. This is when he starts to try and con money out of Roy. How much did Roy give him?
A few £1,000.
A few £1,000, because Roy was so grateful for this guy apparently saving him that he happily pays for all this training, which isn't actually taking place.
I love the fact that Ali just kind of let it happen, but really he could be like, Roy, if you're throwing cash about, I'm still training myself. I've got loads of exams and stuff. It'd be nice if you gave me some cash for those. Because they've got to pay for all that stuff, don't they, doctors?
Well, I think, was this around the time when Ali had his
other things
things going on, yeah.
He hasn't been in it for so long.
I know. Mary finds out, threatens to tell Angie, and he pushes her to the ground.
No!
He blocks her, doesn't he? He's like, "Pacha!" in her face.
Pushes Mary on the floor, yeah.
Mary, yes. But Mary stays quiet about it. She goes and has a little cry outside, but she doesn't tell anyone that Jude's a massive mother beater. You carry on.
He receives the Weatherfield Good Samaritan Award
for saving
Roy's life.
Over, what was it? Somebody who volunteered for 15 years.
Somebody who's been working at an orphanage or something. And somebody else who did something not that impressive, I can't remember, but
they didn't even say what everyone else did, I think, but obviously.
I reckon somewhere in the Weatherfield Good Samaritan Award headquarters there's a lady with a massive map of Weatherfield, and there's 3 or 4 pins in Coronation Street, and she's sitting there going, there's a pattern emerging. I don't know what it means. Is it that there are just heroic people living here, or is it just some kind of vortex of misery? I can't decide.
It's a vortex of goodness, isn't it?
No, because you wouldn't need as good Samaritans if bad things didn't happen.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I see what you mean.
Anyway, Mary confesses to Roy, then Angie, what Jude has done. This is around the ceremony time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then Angie orders him to leave, which he does, but he snatches the child and takes him with him. Don't know why you would want to take a baby with you, because they're really rubbish.
Yeah, and just slow you down, wouldn't they?
They can't earn anything. They just look cute, I suppose. It's like an ornament, though. Roy talks him out of taking the baby, and Jude leaves on a tram, but we don't see that bit. Mary starts to worry about Jude's disappearance and contacts the police. Angie's not really that bothered about it. When the police turn up to ask her, she's like, well, he is a serial liar and con artist, so I'm sure he's fine. Mary gets the worrying news that a body has been fished out of the canal, and the police think it's probably Jude. And Angie goes in, she's like, I'll see if it's Jude. I don't mind. I want to see him dead. She comes out going, no, it's not him. And Mary's like, hooray, thank you, God. And then in 2019, she hires a private detective who tracks Jude down to Blackpool, where he's taken on a new identity as Dr. Ken Barlow, the
master of disguise.
The orthopaedic surgeon. He's not a master of disguise, because he looks the same every time he does it. He doesn't even try a moustache or anything.
He had a fake accent, didn't he?
No, he had an Irish accent.
He was Irish, yeah.
Mary believes his tale that he is just embarrassed and ashamed of what's happened, and he doesn't want to go back because of that. And she says, look, come back with me. I'll help you out. I'll pay for your bill and everything. Let's just go. And he's like, oh, if you're going to pay for that, I also need probably a bit more because I don't know what extras I've added onto the bill. Why don't you just get £800 out and I'll pay for it and I'll meet you in the car. And Mary's like, sounds spiffy.
Roy's like, I don't think you should trust this guy.
Roy's like, I don't know, something doesn't add up. He disappears and Mary goes home without him. But she does get to see some Daleks before she leaves Blackpool.
Yes. And that is it. That's the story of Jude, isn't it? Gone, taken before his time.
But not forgotten by me.
Definitely not. We found out in October that he was leaving, where he confirmed, I think it was on social media, I can't remember, I don't think it was on an interview. He says that he shot his final scenes, but the tram exit was not my final scenes. So this is him saying that we know that we saw him go off without the baby, but I'm going to be back for a little bit. But it was only like for 2 episodes or something, wasn't it? He says it's been amazing. I came in for 4 episodes and it's such a wonderful place to work. So, Jude, Gemma, you're going to remember him favourably, are you?
Oh, I love it, yeah.
I didn't think it was going to ever go down this route because I think if you listen back to some of the earlier episodes of the podcast, like in 2017, we were very anti this character because he was quite boring.
With the best in the world, he was boring, yes.
And I also was never convinced by the idea of Mary having a son. It was one of these things that's not really a retcon, but it kind of is. It's like you didn't see her in 1984, so anything could have happened to her. I just don't like it when there's something major that's happened to a character that we just got told we have to believe it, but it does it. But it goes against a lot. I mean, when there would have been times when she would have mentioned Jude before, and even like when she was going out with Brendan, it wasn't that when she had sex for the first time. You'd have thought that it maybe would have come up then. That how she was taken advantage of by that family friend.
It's difficult to know when it would have come up before now. And she was obviously ashamed of it, and it was a very traumatic time in her life, so I don't know why she'd just be mentioning it left, right and centre. We know she likes to talk about her mum, but she doesn't talk about it's very interesting. She talks about what her mum says and what her mum does, but she's never really spoken about what she did when she was younger, which is perhaps a clear sign that it's a bit more traumatic than we were led to believe.
Fine, yeah, we'll go there. But yeah, when Jude came in, I was like, yeah, okay. So I don't really like the idea that Mary's got a son, but let's see what he's like. And I think part of the problem with Jude was that he was brought in to be this perfect character, wasn't he? He was brought in for 4 episodes, and it was like
George hunk.
Yeah. Coming sort of sweeping in on Christmas Day like a Christmas miracle. Exactly, and they hadn't really developed his character any more than that. He just needed somebody who was kind of nice, and then he disappeared off. And then it was when they decided, well, it might be a good idea to bring him back the next year. I think they scrabbled around a little bit for so how can we turn this into somebody like a memorable character? And it took them a while, but in the end, it was taking the fact that everybody found him a bit boring and making a joke out of it, which is quite a
I don't really understand what happened with him, because there's no reason why he or anyone else should be boring, because you know, there's a whole bunch of creative people behind all of these ideas, and the storyliners and script writers, and they're all, you know, and the actors are all trying their hardest to be entertaining, but somehow they just created this.
It was just very, very bland.
Of nothing.
Yeah. And suddenly, I mean, when he called Mary a freak, he just had these occasional outbursts, wouldn't he? He was like, "Oh, he's come to life."
But you know what?
And then he goes back to boring again.
If you're going to take the fact that it turns out he was lying all along and everything, and project it backwards, actually it does make a lot of sense that he was keeping his head down, biding his time, and just getting by on looking good, you know, being good looking and not saying much, which is what you would do if you were living a lie the whole time and you didn't want to draw attention to yourself. Yeah. And then every so often his stress would just bubble up and he would be horrible to somebody like he was to Mary, and that's exactly how you would be if you were living with his tension the whole time and kind of blaming her, really, because it is her fault that he had to lie and he's there in the first place. He probably felt a bit resentful.
Yeah,
you can go. The thing about Jude as a compulsive liar is that it works, and it's one of these. It's clearly something they decided at the last minute, but it works with everything that we know about the character.
Well, I think even when
it makes him more interesting.
I think even when they revealed that he wasn't actually a marine biologist, even at that point, he wasn't like, oh, okay, he's a compulsive liar. It wasn't until like autumn last year when he started doing a few more things that they said, okay, we can make something out of this. He just had one massive lie last year.
I really want to see Jude come back, because I thought it was amazing when he cracked out that Irish accent in Blackpool as Dr. Barlow.
Yeah.
I wonder what other accents he knows and what other strange professions.
I'd quite like to see him if he came back to have like a proper disguise on. Like, I wonder how much they could change Paddy's face and make him grow a beard or have his hair different or just something. So
he's never changed his appearance, has he?
No. Could he fool the viewers at all, just for a little bit, and have us not recognise him?
Too big. He reminds me of Terry Duckworth as like a sort of bad penny that just keeps turning up and taking advantage of his mother's love, you know.
Yeah, I definitely think there's scope for him to come back, as there is Angie, because it seems weird that this is like a 2-year chunk of Mary's life. How do you think that having a son has affected her as a character?
Not really sure.
No, I mean back before he came, she was very much in the whole, you know, I'm looking after Dev's kids and I want a family, but I haven't got one, but I can look after someone else's, and now she's had that little experience. I don't know whether she's, hand on heart, I don't know whether she's any different, because I wouldn't say she's any less gullible. I don't know whether I wouldn't say that she's learned a lesson after Jude's deception, because even up until the last minute she was convinced that she should trust him, like Vera did with Terry, like you said. But I suppose it has enriched her character, and everybody loves Mary. Well, lots of people love Mary, and it was interesting to find a little something new about her. Do you think that the original plan was to make the Appletons a new family unit? Because that's how it seemed to me, that after the Nazirs, the Appletons were brought in, and it's like, okay, look, we've got this guy that's Mary's son, so there's a link already. We've got a black actress, so we haven't got very many. We haven't got many people of colour on Coronation Street, so this could be quite good. They've got a baby. I think if they're like in different circumstances, I could definitely have seen them eventually moving into a house and settling down, and as they being the new family unit.
Yeah.
But do you think that was their original plan, or is it like it could have been their plan but they were hedging their bets?
It's difficult. I mean, every time a person comes onto the show who, you know, is a little family unit, you know that there's a scope for it.
I just wonder whether I can't remember whether Paddy chose to leave or whether he was given the old heave-ho, but I think that generally the viewer reaction to the family was just not positive enough, and they decided, nah.
It all came a bit too late. All the interesting things came a bit too late.
I mean, they always said. Lots of viewers have said that Angie had potential. I think that's the general lasting impression of that character. And there was the stuff with Adam, wasn't there, when she had that kiss with him, and like.
The thing about the Appletons is they were always very separate from everyone else, and their only real link to the show was Mary, and a lot of the times the scenes were totally set apart, and it was just scenes and scenes and scenes in Emily's
number
house.
3, yeah. I mean, Angie kind of like was kind of friends with Toya, but only when it suited the programme.
Well, that budding friendship and her job that she got being everybody's bookkeeper, not Becky. That was the beginning of like them coaxing her out of her shell, and then the stuff with Jude being a liar and everything. I just felt like, oh, we're getting somewhere now at last. This is really fun. I had faith in them all along because I think both the actors are very talented, and they've just been kind of like treading water. But here we go now, and then they were like, oh yeah, he's going now. And so's Angie.
Well, they also had Jude working in the cabin for a bit, didn't they? But we never saw that. Like you're talking about
them like 1 or 2 scenes of him like taking someone's change or and that was it.
Was it just a quick replacement for Norris isn't maybe coming back for a little bit? Let's put Jude there. I think most people probably forget that he was even working there. 'Cause, yeah, you're right about them being very separate. I can't think of many characters that Jude ever properly interacted with. Were you surprised when you heard that the character was leaving? I know we were a little bit disappointed.
Oh, well, that's a weird question.
Well, to me it came out of nowhere a little bit, because it felt like things were just revving up. Even if I was never a mega Appleton fan, it seemed when he ran off, especially because it was building up to the vow renewal. There was the Weatherfield Samaritans, and I don't think I knew that at the end of that episode or soon after he was going to sort of get off on that tram, and that was literally the last we'd see of him. I was like, oh, is he gone then?
Yeah,
I had no idea.
I see what you mean.
Mm-hmm. Especially when I'd heard the rumours like a few months beforehand that he was going to be involved in a domestic violence story with Mary.
I don't know why they went down that route, really.
Well, they barely did.
I know.
And that could have been something that developed into a longer storyline.
I don't think people would have liked that at all. I think it would have gone too dark. Because Mary's such an innocent, pure soul, isn't she? She just tries her best all the time. And it's bad enough that he fleeced her of £800, and broke her heart, let alone started beating her about. Yeah,
and when it actually came to it, he didn't really hit her anyway, did he? It was very.
It was a weirdly
unclear. He kind of blocked her, didn't he? And happened to catch her across the face. But when I read the headlines, domestic abuse storyline, Jude's going to start attacking Mary, I thought, they're going to turn him into a proper villain. And maybe at that point I thought they're going to turn into a proper villain and then he's going to leave. But when it turned out that it was just one thing and that was it, and it was kind of an accident, I was like, oh, okay, well, there's a bit of a nothing story. And I suppose, as I say, he always had a temper. So it didn't come out of nowhere completely. Anything else to add about Jude?
No.
They're struggling to talk very much about him because
we don't need to talk.
90 episodes.
It's a half an hour long discussion, and I've said quite a lot of what I think of him.
Maybe he'll come back. Maybe he won't.
I would love it if he came back.
Not,
and I
wish.
Want them to. Now they've got a developed character out. It took them a while, but now they've got a character with a convincing backstory, an interesting personality, and instant conflict, because he's clearly not out for anyone but himself. I think he's brilliant.
There's not been. I think he probably would be able to quite easily charm other people on the street if he came back as well. Mary would definitely roll over him straight away, and I think Roy would be there trying to convince everyone, no, don't you remember all about
I don't know how widespread the knowledge is that he did, the stuff that happened in Blackpool. I would imagine that Mary and Roy have kept that quite to themselves. And I think there would be a lot of opportunity for Jude to work his way around a few gullible people, and then
half of the people living in Coronation Street probably couldn't even remember who he is anyway.
Half of them probably just been given £30,000 out of nowhere that they're willing to get rid of almost instantly because burning a hole in their pocket.
Let's finish off with a few quotes then from Paddy. He said, this is his description of Jude. He lives in every single moment. He doesn't think like everyone else does, or of the consequences. Once we've moved past the guilt, he forgets it. But he doesn't think of how it will impact on everyone else's life. He manipulates every moment in the hope things will turn out well for himself. He's got quite a good handle on him there. I think he's had a really troubled background, having to live on his wits and lies. He's done really well, but when it starts to turn, he has to grab onto it. I think he would love to be a good person, but he's very aware of how to manipulate people, but it doesn't work anymore. I agree that he wants to be a good person, but once you kind of get caught in a lie, it spirals out of control, and you feel like, I can't get out of this now.
He's built his house on sand.
Yes. Right, that is it for Jude Appleton.
Well, I mean, lying is a skill. He just needs to get a job like as a storyteller or some kind of something where he can just make things up, and
telemarketer.
He could be an actor.
Oh, yes.